Good morning. Welcome to Talkline on the MetroNews Radio Network.
Do not attempt to change the station. You are surrounded.
We interrupt this program to bring you an emergency news bulletin. Repeat, this is an emergency bulletin. Keep your radio turned on.
Holy smoke.
From the studios of the West Virginia Radio Corporation and the MetroNews Radio Network, the voice of West Virginia, comes the most powerful radio show in West Virginia. This is MetroNews Talkline with Hoppy Kercheval.
Check set lineup link. Activated Telos telephone. Switch network control from Charleston to Morgantown.
Stand by. Cue Hoppy. You're on.
Good morning. Welcome to Talkline on MetroNews in and around the great state. Hoppy Kercheval with you. Joe Nelson, our producer. Patrick Reinhardt handling the video stream. You can watch us at wvmetronews.com. Phone number 1-800-765-8255. Email me, talkline at wvmetronews.com. Tweet me at Hoppy Kercheval. Text me 304-TALK-304. The question I tweeted out this morning is, how would Booth Goodwin do if he ran for governor? It is very, very likely that he's going to, especially after yesterday, where he announced that he's resigning as U.S. Attorney later this week, end of the year, midnight Thursday. So we're going to talk about that this morning, but that's the question. And also, there is, and I don't know how deeply you get into this, but there is a lot of political intrigue. There are a lot of political tongues wagging in West Virginia trying to make sense of this. And I think I can, and I will, later this hour. Also coming up this morning, in the upcoming legislative session, there will be another attempt to pass legislation authorizing, and I got to figure out what term I'm going to use, because one term is forced pooling, another term is lease integration, for hydraulic fracturing in West Virginia for the natural gas wells. It came very close to passing last year. It did fail. In the legislature, there will be another attempt to pass it, but it's controversial. There are those who are against it, and we're going to hear from them this morning. We hear from one group this morning who's against it, the West Virginia Mineral Owners Association. We'll talk to them about that. Also coming up, the Mountaineers leave this morning, if they've not already left, for Phoenix and the Cactus Bowl, Motel 6 Cactus Bowl. Brad Howe joins us at 11:30 to talk about that. Plus, again, your phone calls at 1-800-765-8255. Email Talkline at wvmetronews.com. Tweet at Hoppy Kercheval. Text me 304-TALK-304. How will Booth Goodwin do in the governor's race if, in fact, he gets in, which we expect he will? But we start this morning with a story we talked about first last week, but there are many perspectives on this. And as West Virginia's continued population decline / stagnation, which is very detrimental to the state. John Deskins is head of WVU's Bureau of Business Economic Research. He joins us on MetroNews Talkline. John, good morning. Welcome in. How are you, sir?
Hoppy, doing well. So glad to be on your show again.
Thanks to have you back. Okay, so we look at the population around the country. It's still growing. We see congressional seats likely shifting to other states. West Virginia likely going to lose a seat after 2020, all because West Virginia is not growing in population. Why is that happening? Why are we not growing?
Well, it's pretty straightforward to say why we're not growing over the past couple of years. It's because of jobs, of course. We see out-migration, and there's no doubt that the loss of jobs, particularly the loss of coal jobs in West Virginia, is sparking this out-migration. And, this isn't a good thing for West Virginia altogether, that's for sure.
Why? Why is it so bad? Because I do hear, and I know the argument is wrong, but I do hear, well, good, when more people leave, that means there's more, that the jobs that remain are there for the rest of us.
Yeah, exactly. We have to make ourselves attractive to potential businesses. If we want to thrive and flourish, we have to make potential businesses want to come to West Virginia. To make them want to come here, we have to convince them that they can find the workers that they need. First and foremost, they have to be confident they can just find the quantity of workers that they need, not even to mention quality issues. But if we have a dwindling population, businesses are going to find it less and less attractive to come to West Virginia because they can't find those workers they need. And population loss can really spark a vicious cycle. If your state becomes less attractive to businesses because of a diminished labor pool, new businesses are less likely to come here. Maybe existing businesses are going to be less prosperous in the state, and we can see a downward spiral altogether. So this is not the direction we want to be going in.
Yeah, speaking of the downward spiral, and John Deskins is with us of WVU's Bureau of Business Economic Research, is that we end up then with an older population, no offense to people of my age, but an older population which tends to be more on the receiving end of benefits. Medicare, which doesn't affect the state so much, but Medicare, Medicaid, perhaps, if they're older and poorer, they tend to be less healthy. They're not out necessarily making new investments in things. And so you're right. That's part of that spiral, too, isn't it?
Absolutely. The strain on the public sector is absolutely a crucial part of the spiral. This is exactly what we see in Charleston and in our local government coffers as well. We see fewer and fewer people paying taxes into the state and local governments, and we see greater demands on the local government and the state government as we have an older population. So a large number of retirees relative to the number of working age people is, not a good thing.
John, and you might see and maybe this is part of the factor in Fayette County. I don't want to micro this down too much, but when you have an older population in the county and they want to pass, somebody wants to pass a bond issue for the schools, well, older folks might say, well, wait a minute, I don't have any kids in school, or I paid for my kids to go through school. I don't want to have higher taxes. So they would reject a bond issue. I mean, it manifests itself in all kinds of different ways. I don't mean to tell you're the expert, but it just does.
No, that's a good example. I mean, that's one of many examples, but absolutely. I mean, with fewer and fewer working age people, with more and more people who are dependent on the system if they're old and disabled, et cetera, it puts the system in a bind, and it makes it harder and harder for government to provide those services like education and transportation infrastructure that are vital to attracting new business and new activity to the state.
John Deskins with us, head of WVU's Bureau of Business and Economic Research, talk about the 2015 census numbers that came out. They update them every year. West Virginia's population went down slightly from the previous year, but we're now at like 1.84 million people. But perhaps more importantly is the projections that I've looked at show that West Virginia for 2020 would not have the size of population necessary to keep its third congressional seat. We'll probably lose a congressional seat for 2022. And John, when I was talking with an expert about this with Election Data Services, and the individual at Election Data Services said, well, you're not out of the running yet. If you can add about 60,000 people between now and 2020, then you probably would save that congressional seat. And I thought, I don't see that happening. Do you?
I would think that it'd be more likely to for me to win the lottery than for West Virginia to add 60,000 people over the next 5 years. And I don't even play the lottery, so that tells you how likely I think that is. I mean, for West Virginia, if we can turn around the losses and see any gains, that would be good news for me. But to add 60,000 would be absolutely unfathomable based on what we've seen over the last, let's say, 2 decades.
So what do we do, John?
We have to just focus on the fundamentals. That's all we can do. We have to focus on good public policy. There's a lot of discussions that are being debated vigorously in Charleston, and I think that's encouraging. We have to focus on things like making our workforce attractive to potential businesses by promoting education. Our education outcomes are, of course, lagging. No news there. We have to think outside of the box in terms of what can we do to get these schools to perform better. And another thing we have to do, another thing to point out, is that we have to think of this regionally, because not every region in West Virginia is losing population or is suffering economically in the same way. We have some regions of prosperity. And over the long run, what we can really hope for is for some regions to do well and thrive and be prosperous. We can't expect that every single county in West Virginia is going to turn things around in the same way, and we have to allow the regions that have strengths to flourish as best they can. We have to embrace their different strengths and weaknesses that we see across the state, in terms of the different regions.
John, I think of the Eastern Panhandle, and I mentioned this morning in a commentary, one of my top 9 stories of 2015 was the announcement and then the subsequent groundbreaking for the Procter & Gamble manufacturing facility in the Eastern Panhandle in Berkeley County. And in talking with those folks over there, they cited a couple of reasons. Well, they had many reasons for locating there. One was the site. It happened to be an excellent site, 500 acres of relatively flat land right next to I-81 and very close to population centers in the east and northeast and southeast and Midwest. The second thing they talked about was the available workforce. They did their research on that. They believe they can find a workforce and train it. They are already accepting applications. They're already working with the Blue Ridge Community and Technical College to train people for those positions. So available workforce is very high up there. And I said at the time, and I know people get upset about this, is that there are lots of places in West Virginia you could not put that plant, even if you had the interstate, because you wouldn't have the available workforce, and that's a problem.
No, anytime somebody talks to me about what we need to do in terms of our economy in West Virginia, that is right at the top of my list. A common thing that I say that you've probably heard me say before is that it doesn't matter how good our infrastructure is. Not that infrastructure is obviously very important, but it doesn't matter how good our infrastructure is. It doesn't matter how good our tax climate is. All these other things don't matter if businesses can't find the workers they need. We have to get this drug abuse problem taken care of. We have to get educational outcomes improving. We have to improve the higher education, K-12 education, but also technical community college education to meet the demands that workers have today, that employers have today. That's job number one for sure.
John, I want to go back to a point you referenced there just a minute ago, because it can be, if we go deeper here, very controversial. And that is, you said, think about this regionally, because there are pockets of the state where there is growth. It would not be politically popular for anybody in elected office or running for office to say there are parts of the state where we have growth, and that's good, and there are parts of the state where I'm sorry, I really can't help. Isn't that, however, how it is, whether you're looking at West Virginia or across the country? There are parts of the country, there are parts of West Virginia where, I'm sorry, there's just not going to be very much potential at all for economic growth. Is that, or how would you phrase it, if in fact that is a truism?
This country has a decades-long trend, if not a century-long trend, towards less rural living and more urban living. The rural areas in the Midwestern part of the country, for example, have been losing population for decades. People are moving to the cities there, like Kansas City and Omaha and Oklahoma City, for example. The rural counties in that part of the country losing population. And this is a trend all across the country as our economy evolves. There's a whole host of reasons for that. But we can't. We live in a free market economy, and people and economic activity goes. They go to where it makes sense. We can't fight against fundamental market forces.
Do you know what really stands out too is that in 1950, and I pointed this out yesterday, in 1950, West Virginia's population was 2 million. It had 6 congressional representatives, and North Carolina's population was 4 million. They had 7 or 8 or something. And now in 2015, West Virginia's population is 1.84 million, and North Carolina's population has crossed the 10 million mark. The 9 states that crossed the 10 million mark. And that's the old hillbilly highway, in part, hillbilly highway.
Absolutely. We have to cultivate urban areas where young people want to live and stay and where businesses want to locate. We have to cultivate our strong areas like Charleston and north central West Virginia, like Morgantown, like the Eastern Panhandle, hopefully like the Beckley region. But we have to put islands of prosperity and islands of hope and optimism in our state to keep people here. But not every county is going to maintain the same population level that it had 20, 30, 50 years ago. It's just against fundamental evolution that our country altogether is seeing.
I understand. John Deskins, head of WVU's Bureau of Business Economic Research. John, thank you for your insights as always. I appreciate your time this morning.
Have a great New Year.
All right, man. You too. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
You feel a strong desire to help hurting children and families in West Virginia, but you think,
what could I do?
Burlington United Methodist Family Services has a place for everyone. Folks to help with office duties in their facilities across the state. Professional and business people to help teach youth about their professions. Volunteers for their annual pumpkin and apple harvest festivals. And of course, donations of all kinds. What can you do? Search your heart and go to BUMFS.org today. BUMFS.org.
It's here, the year-end blockbuster sales event at your Central West Virginia Jeep Giant. Northside Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram trucks in Summersville. Inventory is huge, and so are the savings. Come on in now for this deal. A 2016 Jeep Cherokee Latitude 4x4 cold weather group. Yep, you're going to need it. Satellite radio, retail price $29,230. Blockbuster price $24,999. You save over $4,200. It's only the beginning. See us in person or online at northsidewv.com. Hi, it's Tony Caridi, and I've got a great West Virginia story I'd like you to watch. Doddridge County's Clara Santucci is in the final stages of training in her bid to earn a spot on the United States Olympic team in the marathon. Her story embodies West Virginia's culture of hard work, dedication, and grit. In association with the Prim law firm, Pikewood Creative has produced a documentary on Clara's Olympic dream. Watch the video by going to primlaw.com. That's PRIM law.com.
You're listening to Talkline on MetroNews. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
Almost there. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Gosh, cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest, because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank, member FDIC. Coming up next half hour, Booth Goodwin leaving the U.S. Attorney's Office position, in all likelihood entering the governor's race. We'll talk about what that means here in just a couple of minutes. So the severe storms across the South, parts of the Southwest, the greater Midwest, the Heartland, and continuing to ravage parts of the country and other areas. The recovery continues, particularly in Texas, like Garland, Texas, and now it's turned into winter-like conditions. Eben Brown, Fox News Radio, following the story. Eben, good morning. Thanks for joining us. What's the latest from Fox on this?
Good morning. Well, the latest really is that cleanup continues in many of these affected towns, especially in Texas, where tornadoes struck over the weekend. But there is also a big concern for flooding now. A lot of water has fallen in the past week, either during rainstorms, the storms that produce the tornadoes, or winter weather that's plaguing the region now. And that water all has to go somewhere. We're already seeing creeks and rivers beginning to swell and even start to flood out. Even the Mississippi River is having some troubles south of St. Louis. They expect the river to crest probably on Thursday at a height equal to or greater than 50 feet. So this is another problem. So we will have to see how this plays out into how many areas along these rivers, even some of these smaller rivers, are going to affect neighborhoods, towns, and the like.
Eben, all kinds of numbers out there on extent of damage, loss of life, homes damaged, property damage. What do you have any numbers handy of what you've read or heard or reported this
in
morning?
terms of loss of life over the past week, it's upwards of 50 or so. The damages to homes, numerous homes, hundreds in the Dallas area, I can tell you that. Dollar figures, we don't really have that kind of thing yet. There's estimations of millions, of course, obviously, but one of the things that needs to happen is, the emergency response needs to finish doing its work. Then comes the insurance industry to really tally up what needs to be fixed, what's not fixable and needs to be replaced or demolished, and then we start getting to see some real dollar amounts. Those are the dollar amounts that'll be used to either compute insurance payouts or government assistance to victims, and we'll know that for quite a while. I can tell you that states of emergency have been declared for most, if not all, of these affected areas at the state level. I'm sure federal declarations will come eventually, and those declarations, people hear that term a lot, declared an emergency. Well, that actually is a legal proceeding. Right. It frees up a lot of money and resources to bypass regular legislative budgeting to be used to help people. And so with that, we'll see a lot of money pour into these affected areas.
Eben Brown, Fox News Radio. Eben, thank you for the update.
You got it.
All right, good to speak with you. We appreciate your time. So let me get back to the population decline. And I got an email on this from an individual, didn't want his name used. He says, I don't want to use my name. I want to remain anonymous. But he said, yes, Hoppy, places like North and South Carolina have been very impressive with job creation and economic development over the last 20 to 30 years. Prior to that, many West Virginians did indeed go to Detroit, Chicago, etc. for jobs. Of course, D.C. has been another nearby place for people from around the country to have a career. However, and the person listed his name as Alonzo. However, Alonzo said, this may not be the biggest issue, but here's one to consider. West Virginians take a lot of pride in being friendly or nice people, to a point that is true. Now, I'm not trying to bash. What many natives of the state don't realize is that this friendliness does not apply in all situations. Many are resistant to outsiders, non-West Virginians. It can be subtle, and most probably, folks don't even realize it, but there is a real resistance to change and or to people who are different. This, too, infringes on progress. Sure, there's been some progress in Charleston, Morgantown, and a few other spots in the state, but even in these places, one who has spent time here and in cities around the country can see that West Virginia is behind the times. I'm not saying it's only West Virginia, but it's certainly a significant factor here, which is obvious to outsiders. Alonzo says, yes, some outsiders have niches, doctors, plant engineers, and a few others, but for most coming to West Virginia, it is a difficult undertaking. I say all this, Hoppy, in the spirit of constructive criticism. There are some nice traits about West Virginia, and I in no way am denying this, says Alonzo. I think Alonzo makes a very good point. It is not the only reason, certainly, why we struggle in West Virginia to attract and retain people. But there is an issue. I mean, there is no question that West Virginia can be a very parochial place. And you hear it all the time, that if there's a position to be filled or you're hiring somebody for a high position, you hear all the time, well, why not get somebody from West Virginia? Because they're here, they know what it's like here, they know what the deal is, they understand us, they get it. Okay, I understand that argument. But oftentimes it's healthy to bring in somebody from the outside who's not connected to everybody, who has experience from other places, and he can bring new and different ideas to West Virginia. So we're not just doing the same things over and over and over again. The outside influences. We should not be resistant or suspicious of outsiders. We should be welcoming of people who want to come to West Virginia with new and different ideas. But again, that can be a challenge in West Virginia. We're going to take a break and come back. What's the Goodwin probable candidacy mean? That's next. This is Talkline on MetroNews, the voice of West Virginia. 10:30, let's get a news update. Check in with the Metro News Radio Network. Find out what's happening statewide this hour, all across the great state of West Virginia.
West Virginia Metro News, I'm Shauna Johnson. Wood County officials say they're lucky that the tornado that touched down a week ago tomorrow south of Parkersburg moved through so quickly, limiting damage. Sharon Kesselring with the American Red Cross of Northwest West Virginia, though, says the damage was devastating in spots.
Every once in a while you would see like 2 homes that were just totally devastated, and then a home next to them, there, no damage done to it whatsoever. Just the same as a tornado would do anyplace else, where it jumps from here to there.
Emergency officials say they doubt there's enough damage to qualify for assistance from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Damage assessments continue today in Kanawha County after flash flooding on Christmas Day. In the new year, State Supreme Court Justice Menace Ketchum will become Chief Justice, a role he previously held in 2012. Some public training for the Kanawha County Sheriff's Department's K-9 unit.
That training was conducted at Yeager Airport in Charleston. The training is done each year during the holiday season at the airport. Paxton Lively with the Sheriff's Office says it's important to get the dogs out in a public place.
You're out here with the public. There's different people walking in and out the whole time you're here. One dog might come in. There might be 2 people in here walking around. The next dog comes in. There might be 30.
Lively said there's a lot the dogs must learn, who are trained to sniff for both narcotics and for explosives. But obedience is the most important trait.
That's Matt McCarroll reporting. You're listening to Metro News, a voice of West Virginia.
Here's a wintertime safe driving message from the West Virginia Department of Transportation. Where there's ice and snow, take it slow. Driving on snow-covered roadways requires more attention and less speed. Also watch for black ice on bridges, ramps, and in shady spots, and especially be cautious around snowplows. The best thing you can do to drive safely in the wintertime is slow down. Where there's ice and snow, take it slow. This winter safety driving message from the West Virginia Department of Transportation Division of Highways and the Safety Management Task Force, saving one life at a time.
Hi, it's Tony Caridi, and I've got a great West Virginia story I'd like you to watch. Doddridge County's Clara Santucci is in the final stages of training in her bid to earn a spot on the United States Olympic team in the marathon. Her story embodies West Virginia's culture of hard work, dedication, and grit. In association with the Prim law firm, Pikewood Creative has produced a documentary on Clara's Olympic dream. Watch the video by going to primlaw.com. That's PRIM law.com.
Sentencing is scheduled for February in Cabell County for the woman who's entered a guilty plea to voluntary manslaughter for the 2014 shooting death of her longtime boyfriend. Angela K. Chapman could get 3 to 15 years. With that Kennedy plea, Chapman, who'd originally been charged with first-degree murder, is admitting no guilt. One person is facing charges in Beckley in connection with a Monday night wreck that ended with a car slamming into a house. From the Metro News Anchor Desk, I'm Shauna Johnson.
Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank, member FDIC. So Booth Goodwin, as we told you last week, is a likely candidate for the Democratic nomination for governor. But at that time, he and continues to be the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of West Virginia. And while you're the U.S. Attorney, you cannot also be a politician or even an announced politician. However, he took a step yesterday when he announced that he was leaving the U.S. Attorney's job, which he's held for 5 years. He was there previously as an assistant, but he's been U.S. Attorney for 5 years, leaving at the end of the year, which is Thursday night at midnight. What's it all mean? Howard Monroe, WVLY in Wheeling. Good morning, Howard. How are you?
Good morning, Hop, and happy holidays to you.
And to you, sir. Thank you very much. What's it all mean?
Well, as I said when I posted this on social media yesterday, it's about to get interesting. I think for the Democrats, Booth Goodwin brings a lot of very positive things to the table. Probably the biggest question I have is where will the machine come down on the Democrat side of things? It's been kind of behind Jim Justice so far. Does any of that change with Booth Goodwin getting into the race, assuming that he does, and we both do? What's Jeff Kessler's response to this going to be? I haven't heard from the senator yet on that, and I'll be curious to see about that. But I think Goodwin puts himself in a very good position, at least from the get-go. Now he's got a lot of room to make up in a short period of time, because Justice and Kessler have been out, gaming this for many months now. Really, I guess almost the entire year. And I'm not sure when they both officially announced, but So he's got a lot to make up in a short period of time.
Let me go back to something you said. You said the machine. Is there even a machine anymore? Because I don't think there is. I think there are factions, and people talk about Manchin, and Justice is Manchin's guy in this. But is there, to me, there is no ground machine like there once was. Everybody gets everybody out to vote. If there were, it wouldn't be a red state right now. I mean, that's my take, but you may have a different take on it.
I would agree with you. A machine, when I say machine, your word's probably a better word. There are a couple of powerful factions, and certainly the Manchin faction, or the Manchin machine, is the biggest one there, and they've been clearly aggressively behind Jim Justice. But I think it'll be interesting to see where all of the key major Democrat players come down in this. You've got, of course, Justice, who is I perceive him.
What are you struggling with? What are you struggling with?
Well, I'm struggling. I've been struggling with Jim Justice ever since he announced.
Well, because I tell you why. Because you don't know. I mean, he's Jim Justice, and he's a gregarious, outgoing guy. He's good on the stump. He saved the Greenbrier. He's got all these businesses. He's got $1.7 billion. But you have no idea where he is on a lot of the so-called issues. Not so-called, but a lot of the issues. I think he has made some statements on things like right to work and maybe increasing the severance tax, those kinds, or decreasing the severance tax, but he really doesn't have that kind of agenda that's out there right now.
No, you're absolutely right, and that is exactly what I'm struggling with, because I want to try to set up my image is of Justice on the right and Kessler clearly far on the left, and Goodwin then sort of coming up the middle. I honestly don't know, and I've said on my show and on this show for some time, I don't know enough about Jim Justice to know what he really is all about. I don't even exactly know why he's running for governor, someone in his position. So, and that's not disparaging to him, other than I wish he would tackle more issues. But, one of the points this team has made when Kessler has asked for debates prior to this, one of the points they made was, hey, we don't even have filing deadlines yet.
Right.
Things could change.
Right.
And this is a perfect example of that. We've been treating this as a two-person race for quite some time, and now it looks like it's going to be a three-person race. So I don't know. But I look at Booth Goodwin. He is likable, I think, well-connected, as you've talked about frequently. Despite what some folks on your MetroNews Facebook or MetroNews website page were saying on the story today, he's got significant managerial experience. I don't think people understand that a federal attorney is a manager of a lot of people and a lot of moving parts. So I think he's got that kind of experience. Perceived as a crusader, very positive things, I think, for Booth Goodwin. The downside for the party is, of course, this creates a real divided primary, which means money is going to be at issue, which means endorsements and support are going to be at issue, which means everybody's going to get bloodied a little bit, because that's what happens in primaries. So that has the potential to be a problem for Democrats. On the other hand, as I thought this through, this could well be an energizing primary for the Democratic Party, who I suspect feels a bit beaten down. I know I do. And three good candidates out there, vying for votes could energize.
Yeah, are there enough? Yeah, are there, if you have three viable candidates, is that enough to reach out to Democrats who maybe have been a little bit disenfranchised over the Obama thing, and now maybe will come out of the woodwork and actually encourage more to come out? Of course, that would be in the primary. So, right. but get them energized. I think, I was talking to some people yesterday, over the last week and this morning, and there are myriad angles on this. But one is, how does this thing play out? I mean, there is, I would imagine the Justice people, they've done polling. I don't know what it says about Booth Goodwin, but I've kind of heard that Goodwin's not showing up very high on the radar, and you would expect that if you're in the lead, the metrics would say if you're in the lead, which Justice is, then the more people that get in, the better it is for you, because they would divide up the rest of the vote. So right. Justice could win with 40% or 42 or 44% of the vote if he maintains the lead and everybody else is dividing up what's left. Or another possibility that was given to me this morning by Politico, was that, well, you have Jeff Kessler, who's kind of out there farther on the left with a lot of the traditional Democrats in West Virginia, the labor Democrats, and Justice and Goodwin, they tend to be more moderate Democrats. Do they split up sort of the moderate Democrat, and then the traditional labor left Democrats in West Virginia go to Jeff Kessler?
Or the third scenario is, do you have folks who today are Democrats, who today are saying, well, Kessler is too liberal for me. By the way, he's not for me. But is Kessler too liberal? The Democrats say that he's too liberal for me. Therefore, Justice is my guy in a two-person race. But if Booth Goodwin is a little bit more to the moderate side and maybe a little bit more polished, a little bit more professional, does it give those who have gone to Justice by default because they won't go for the far liberal positions of Kessler another alternative to go to, which could then take away from Justice's position? Because I think a lot of folks that I've talked to are sort of settling on Justice. Well, I believe that was a period sentence. Are settling on Justice because they see it as the best choice that they've got. Given
or they see a certain amount of inevitability about it. And they, whenever that discussion comes up, they always talk about the money. I mean, he has enough money. He's already, imagine this. Yes, the Justice folks will say, well, we're not going to debate now because the filing period hasn't even started. So we're not going to debate. Yet they're already running ads. So
and a lot of them.
Yeah, and a lot of them. And it's already, according to Justice polls, already has moved the needle a little bit. So you cannot underestimate the value of that money and what that money can do, because obviously he's been able to extend his lead a little bit in the early going with that amount of money. And so if you're going to catch and overtake Justice, you got to do what? You're going to have to spend some money, and you're going to have to go after him. And that gets expensive. And can you do that? I don't know where Goodwin's money is going to come from. But he doesn't have personal wealth. He's got some, but doesn't have real money. So in terms of, Rockefeller or Justice money or that kind of thing. So I don't know where the money comes from unless it's been lined up by his supporters. I don't know.
Well, I have to assume that it's not a shot in the dark. I mean, there's been some prep work done somewhere behind this, so they have to have some sense of where it's coming from. I have to give a lot of credit as we look not just at the primary but down to the general election. And I'll hate to say these words, Hop.
Yeah.
I have to give a huge amount of credit to the Republican Party.
Really?
For having coalesced around a candidate so early. Now, as I said on my show this morning, there's always the possibility come filing time that there's some rogue Republican who shows up as well, but it looks like Bill Cole is the inevitable candidate. And I give a lot of credit to the Republican Party for having cleared the way for Bill Cole, getting Morrissey and McKinley to step back. And that was a tremendously smart move, especially given that the Democrats are now going to have a divided primary. Cole just sits there and does his legislative thing for a while and sails right on into the general election season. It's a very smart move for the Republicans, and again, hate to give credit, but I think they deserve a lot of credit for that.
And Bill Cole does not have to spend money getting the nomination. I mean, he'll spend some. He doesn't have to spend real money to get the nomination. Whereas if it's going to, any of the three Democrats is going to have to spend real money, and then after the primary, if it's not Jim Justice, if it's Goodwin or Kessler, they got to start immediately raising more money, go back to that well again for the general. And
the other thing in any primary is that everybody gets bloodied a little bit. So you get beat up by your own party before you even get a chance to go after your primary, your opponent in the general election. With no primary, now that works okay if both parties have a primary going on, because everybody is encumbered by the same problems. But with Cole being the almost guaranteed nominee, and therefore he just waits around to the general election, and with the Democrats having to have this primary fight, and again it looks like now to be a significant primary fight. That bodes well for the Republicans, I have to say.
Howard Monroe, WVLY. Howard, always a pleasure.
It will be an interesting year, Pop.
All right. I'm looking forward to it.
Indeed, so am I. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, pal. We'll be back. Stay with us.
West Virginia has balanced its budget on the back of the coal industry ever since we became a state 150 years ago. Historically, the coal industry and coal-fired electric utilities have accounted for over 60% of all business taxes, while high-energy wages contribute a disproportionate share of income taxes, and coal severance dollars sustain important programs in all counties. All told, the industry infuses over $26 billion to our state's economy. Coal alone has paid down nearly $1 billion of the state's workers' compensation debt. Consequently, all state businesses have experienced major reductions in workers' comp benefits. The coal industry has always supported our people and our economy, but it's under attack from the Obama administration and the EPA. It's fighting to survive. Coal taxes in West Virginia are higher than our surrounding states. We're losing coal markets to our neighbors. Let's get our mines and coal miners working again. Support a reduced tax rate for mining, paid for by West Virginia Coal Association.
'Tis the season to start saving. At MVB Bank, it's easy with our new 12-month CD. Start earning 1.15% annual percentage yield with a minimum deposit of just $1,000. To start your CD savings today, visit our jolly team at any MVB location or call us at 844-MVB-BANK. It's sure to keep you off the naughty list next year. MVB Bank, your financial life made easy. Member FDIC.
This is Talkline on MetroNews. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
Almost there. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
Talkline on MetroNews. Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank, member FDIC. Ring in the new year at the 3rd annual Downtown Countdown. It's going to be in Princeton in their Arts District. New Year's Eve celebration is going to have 5 stages for live music, street performers, going to be a ball drop countdown, fireworks, right at the stroke of midnight, plus more. That's going to be the Downtown Countdown in Princeton this New Year's Eve. For more information on kicking off New Year's Eve in the Mountain State, go to... It's actually that the website is go2wv.com, go2wv.com, or call 800-225-5982, 800-225-5982. The Downtown Countdown in Princeton this year, this New Year's Eve. Back to the probable Goodwin candidacy. He hasn't declared yet, but it's all but done. And I have heard since I started hearing this months ago, and have talked about it some and have written about it, and it really intensified last week when I wrote about it, saying his candidacy was likely, that I've talked to all kinds of people who've tried to figure out what's going on here, tried to decipher the machinations of what's happening and why Goodwin is getting in the race and who's behind it and where's Manchin and all this, and is Rockefeller involved in some way. And this recurring theory because Manchin is connected to Jim Justice and played a role, I believe, most believe, in getting Justice to run. And consulting Jim Justice in his candidacy is Larry Puccio. And Larry Puccio, former Democratic Party chairman, is hooked at the hip with Joe Manchin. So you see the connection there. So this one theory keeps coming about that, well, this is all a kind of a feign move where Justice is in for a while, kind of keeps everybody out except Kessler because of his money, and then at the last minute, Justice pulls out. Then the way is cleared for Goodwin, and Goodwin is actually Manchin's guy in all this. And that's one of a series of theories that are out there. Another one is that, well, Rockefeller's got his fingers on this, but nobody's heard squat from Rockefeller since he retired. Nobody's heard squat. So, but the other theory is, well, Rockefeller is connected here to the Goodwins, and so this is kind of Rockefeller's guy in all this. Here's an email that says, Hoppy, here's another theory, is that somebody asked about Booth Goodwin's move is, why is he leaving U.S. Attorney's office? Is he being encouraged to run for governor because people support him, or because Goodwin represents a real threat to certain powerful individuals the longer he served as the U.S. Attorney, because he's smart and has done a decent job as prosecutor, and this is a way to get heat off their back if he's not U.S. Attorney? I believe that all this is overthinking what's going on here. Now, I'm not saying that people such as Manchin and maybe other powerful Democrats in West Virginia, we know that Chuck Smith, former Democratic Party chairman, is supportive of Booth Goodwin, that there aren't behind the scenes, obviously, people who have connections are certainly lining up with particular candidates. I get all that. But I don't think there is any grand scheme here. I don't think there is any Machiavellian plot here to move these pieces in this very controlled way. I believe this is really Occam's razor. I believe the simplest explanation here is, in fact, the most likely. Jeff Kessler in because he's a true believing Democrat. He carries the weight on the left-center side, wants to be governor, has run before, and is running again. Jim Justice, no question that Manchin, I believe, had a role in getting Jim Justice to run, feeling that there was a vacuum there. Justice is a guy with a lot of money, big gregarious guy, saved the Greenbrier. Now, he really does care about the state. Yes, we know the criticisms about paying the bills and about firing people and stuff like that, but he really does care about West Virginia and feels like he can do some good, so he wants to get into this thing. And Manchin's people obviously working with him on that. So Goodwin, I think, simply wants to be the governor. He's been the U.S. attorney. So if you've, and people are saying, why didn't you run for Congress? Why didn't you run for Attorney General? Well, you've been the U.S. attorney for 5 years. He's been a successful U.S. attorney for 5 years. And what do you do next? If you really want to make a difference in West Virginia, I mean, if you really want to have your hands in the mud in West Virginia, I don't mean mud, bad mud. I mean, if you really want to get your hands dirty for trying to run the state, fix the state, improve the state, then you want to be governor. You don't want to be over in D.C. Trying for a 2-year term in Congress, constantly raising money, coming back, trying to fight. You don't want to do that. I mean, that's a chore. I'm not saying you can't help, but the most direct position in West Virginia to do the most good or have the biggest influence is to be governor of the state. So I would take this at face value, that Goodwin looked at this and really wants to be the governor. Now, whether he can is a whole other question. But I believe that's the motivation. His wife, Amy Schuler Goodwin, is very politically tuned in. She's been press secretary for 2 governors. She's now secretary of tourism in West Virginia. So she's a political animal. So you got the spouse in, which is important. And you're 44 years old, whatever he is, 44, 45, and you think, what the heck? Will I ever have a better chance than now? The seat's open. Why not run? I think that's what's going on here, and I don't think there is any sort of grand scheme beyond that. It's my take. Yours may be different. We'll be back.
In this season of giving, consider donating your used vehicle to Good News Mountaineer Garage. You'll get the best tax deduction possible and the satisfaction of knowing your donation changed the life of someone in need. Good News Mountaineer Garage repairs donated vehicles and provides them to qualified West Virginia families, giving them access to employment, safe, affordable housing, health care, and other vital necessities, and putting them on the road to economic independence. Call 1-866-GIVE-CAR today for Good News Mountaineer Garage. 866-GIVE-CAR.
When you drive impaired in West Virginia, you break the law and endanger the lives of others. Law enforcement across the state is committed to keeping impaired drivers off the road. If you drive impaired, be prepared to pay the price. There are consequences. It's simple, West Virginia. Drive sober or get pulled over.
This message is brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program, the West Virginia Division of Motor Vehicles, and the West Virginia Department of Transportation.
You're listening to Talkline on Metro News. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
There. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
Talkline on Metro News. Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank, member FDIC. 90 seconds left in this hour. Kanawha County Commissioner Ken Carper, what do you think it's about?
Fix the damn roads. Number 2, Happy New Year.
And to you.
And number 3, I think you've called it again right on the nose. I think he would just like to serve. We'll wait and see.
There's not any other machination here at work. There's not any other grand scheme. There's not any other grand plan. People assume a lot more of that than actually exists.
That's exactly right. I know all 3 of the candidates. I know Jim Justice hardly at all. I know Senator Kessler very well, and I know Booth Goodwin very well. I can tell you when you can tell there's a candidate that the other side's concerned about. They attacked Booth Goodwin this morning and yesterday, saying that he is a Obama staffer and that he's going to continue the war on coal.
Yeah, that's a reach.
I'd come up with some new material if I was them.
Obama staffer. Well, he was appointed by the president, but I think that's a reach to say he's an Obama staffer.
Obama staffer.
All right, are you with them? Who are you with on this?
Well, a friend of mine told me one time that these endorsements are meaningless.
I know, but what do you think? But who? So you have no.
I will make an endorsement if asked to do so after I know who's actually in the race.
Fair enough.
He hasn't even filed yet.
I know, but that's what we do now. That's what I do now. That's what we do now. You know how it is.
That's what I do now too. But you and I are being political junkies.
Junkies. I know.
You can.
I got a break for the
interpret
top there. I got to leave it there. Kanawha County Commissioner Ken Carper right back. Talkline on Metro News, Voice of West Virginia. Welcome back. Hour number 2 of Talkline on the Metro News Radio Network in and around the great state. Hoppy Kercheval with you. Joe Nelson, our producer. Patrick Reinhardt handling the video stream. You can watch us at wvmetronews.com. Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank member, FDIC. You can reach me at 1-800-765-8255. Email me, talkline at wvmetronews.com. Tweet me at Hoppy Kercheval. Text me, 304-TALK-304. The top political story today is a continuation of the story we talked about last week. And that is Booth Goodwin leaving the position of U.S. Attorney Thursday. At the end of the day, Thursday at the end of the year, going back to the family law practice, Goodwin and Goodwin, with the expectation, though he has not said so publicly, with the expectation he will enter the race for the Democratic nomination for governor. Your thoughts on that to me, and I'll relay those, and we'll talk about it. Meantime, as I told you at the outset of the show, and we've talked about before, coming up in this legislative session, undoubtedly there will be another attempt to pass legislation to create forced pooling and or lease integration in West Virginia with hydraulic fracturing. Right now, you actually have lease integration for vertical drilling, but not for horizontal drilling. But the proponents of this say there needs to be a way, a mechanism, so that if you get the majority of mineral holders who want to sell their mineral rights and collect the royalties, but you have a percentage that do not, you have some who do not, that there would be a way to, air quote, a way to force them into the pool. They would be compensated naturally for being put in the pool, but there would be a mechanism to bring them into the pool. Now, as you might expect, not everybody's for this. In fact, during the last legislative session, the bill failed in the House. They worked on it for weeks and weeks, and the bill failed in the House on a tie vote. But there will be an attempt to do it again. Some of the opposition will come from a group called the West Virginia Mineral Owners Association. They had their first meeting in Alderson not long ago to formalize their opposition to forced pooling. They are made up of landowners in Raleigh, Greenbrier, and Monroe counties who own their mineral rights, and they were present at this meeting. Joining us to talk about this and tell us about the group is Basil Keaton with the West Virginia Mineral Owners Association. Basil, good morning. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So what's the opposition from your organization, Basil?
Well, just as a citizen of the United States of America, I'd take offense to the word forced on just about anything. The association with forced pooling to my property rights is a no-brainer. It just comes down to a simple question: do private property owners have a right to own their property? It's just a very simple question, and if we let it go on a simple legislative thing, on a push on fracking or whatever, to go to the point where you can take my mineral rights and do with them as you please, that I am paying taxes on, then where do you stop at that? Do you next time come in and you say, my neighbors have sold their timber and we'd like to have your timber? So it's kind of that point. It's do I have that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is, I heard that a lot during the last legislative session, that basic fundamental complaint. In fact, there was an unusual alliance in the House of Delegates between liberal Democrats and conservative Republicans, and particularly conservative Republicans who said, what about my property rights? This should be my decision. I should not be forced into anything that I don't want to do. And that is that's a very strong argument. However, the argument on the other side is that there are property owners all around who, in the way the legislation is designed, who do want to sell their mineral rights, who do want to benefit from the mineral rights that they hold, but they would not be able to do that if you don't have some mechanism to bring everybody into the pool. So they're saying, what about their rights to sell their mineral rights?
Absolutely, they have the right to do what they want with their private property. And there are people who are concerned about that. They are in the process of trying to negotiate a fair and just value on those rights. That's not in my case or in the case of most people who have their mineral rights with their property. They bought their property with the fee simple acquisition to be in that position until they deem necessary and their choice of what they would like to do with their property, instead of having a legalized legislative effort to say what they can or cannot do with that.
Basil Keaton's with us. West Virginia Mineral Owners Association opposes forced pooling. So do you have a personal story? Do you have mineral rights that you don't want to sell, or you've been approached to sell? Are you in any sort of dispute right now?
I am not. I have been approached 30 years ago by Ashland Oil. I turned them down. Then this push on the Marcellus Shale horizontal drilling came to me and asked me to block in and pool with a lease and a royalties at the wellhead amount. And I, at this point, have no need and do not want to. Again, I bought this property fee simple with complete rights to be in that position, and it's hard to find property with that designation right now. Fee simple is a very much valued asset. If you're looking for property, you will pay a premium for that property. The value is there. The value is real. The legislative responsible and accountable regulation and legislation is necessary on forced pooling is neither, and responsible or accountable in the aspects of what happens to the land or the water or the value of the property after it's all said and done. So it's very concerning.
Mm-hmm. Basil Keaton is with us, West Virginia Mineral Owners Association. Tell us about your organization, or the organization you're a member of. Who are you all, and how many people are at that meeting, and how do you intend on expressing your voices?
The Southern West Virginia Mineral Owners Coalition is something that's just risen from the effort to, through the legislature, to have the forced pooling legislature on the agenda again. It's necessary for us to come together to try to hold our legislators accountable to us. Anyone interested in this coalition can contact us at 304-207-1150, and they can get plugged into our workings from there. We are just a startup place right now, and we plan to gain momentum as we move forward, because it's very essential that property owners have the ability in this country, where we have always been a democratic private property type situation with a capitalist-based economy. And we have allowed corporations to have a lot of power through legislation, through the Supreme Court's designation that they have a lot of money, so their voice is stronger than mine. And there is a lot of issues there that need to be discussed and talked about before we start taking away rights to solve anybody's necessary access to energy and all that. There's a lot of options out there in the world that are more or a lot less are acronine to this situation anyway. You can't take away people's rights because the country says we should frack now because the price is high. This state has always had a boom-bust coal economy. We never set up a situation where we can survive the bust situation in coal industry. That's why we always go into these down times like this with then we start talking about the thoughts. We need to establish these the what after now instead of waiting until it's all said and done and then try to rebound from it.
Basil Keaton's with us, West Virginia Mineral Owners Association. They have formed to oppose forced pooling, but clearly you're pretty well tuned in on this issue, so you know, Basil, that there already is forced pooling for vertical drilling when that already exists, that other states around the country have forced pooling legislation, that if the government decided, of course that would be the government decided they were going to build a road through your property, they would use eminent domain, they'd pay you for it. So it's not as though private property rights are so exclusive that there can't be variables in certain instances.
Correct, but in the state of West Virginia, this is not the first time this has happened. Right after we gained our statehood, it was suddenly realized that there was immense mineral wealth in this state, and taxes were levied on the settlers who were already here, knowing that they couldn't pay those taxes, so that we could allow the land corporations to come in and pay the taxes and claim the property. And that was legally stealing the property of the citizens. Today, we have a situation where the property owners pay the taxes. The corporations want to come in and have the state legislate legal robbery of their property through forced pooling law, even though they're paying taxes. So, you know, this is kind of a vicious circle. If you don't get a hold on it at some point, you lose your ability to have a representative legislation that reflects the citizens instead of what somebody else would like it to be.
I do understand certainly the concept of private property rights, but isn't the term robbery very pejorative in this instance because you're talking about just compensation for the value of the mineral?
I bought this property 40 years ago, and I paid more than it was worth then, and I was called a fool. I'm sitting here on the land the type of land that I wanted, it fee simple. And I raised my kids, and I've just retired recently, and I'm sitting here now, and everything that I'm being told is that I have to change, and I have not a problem with change. Again, forced pooling is a harsh way of putting this all together, and I think that the rush is what's caused that statement to come about. There are people in this state that are willing to play in this game, and I'm not. You know, that's just where I'm at on it. It's not that I intend to dictate to anybody else what they should do.
Are you, though, by taking this view, aren't you in fact dictating to others who, and I don't know the geography there, who may be around you, who may want to participate in the pool, but cannot because there isn't forced pooling? So aren't you de facto dictating to them by your action?
Not in my situation. There's only one property owner who joins me and in its general area that owns the mineral rights on their property. My land is not that great of a block of land, nor even included with his to where it would cause a difficulty for fracking to take course if it was allowed.
Can you see, and we're talking with Basil Keaton, who is with the West Virginia Mineral Owners Association, which is formed to oppose forced pooling in West Virginia. Can you see the other side of the argument? Can you envision the situation where there are mineral rights holders who do in fact want to, they have those mineral rights for a reason, they want to sell them, they want to profit from them, they want to benefit from them, they've paid the taxes over the years, they own the mineral rights, but are not able to do so because there are a minority who do not want to sell their rights? Can you see their side of the story?
I can see their side of the story, but I do not know of a situation right now that exists in that context.
Well, I think maybe not in yours, but in other parts of the state, they may.
Well, I know people in Greenbrier County. I know people up in Monroe County that are in that situation. They just are there because they want to be. Some of these people are willing participants, and they are in the process of negotiating, but they have reached a point where through their negotiations the time limit has come about, and they are in jeopardy of losing their lease if forced pooling is allowed to be legislated. And if they lose their lease, then they lose a substantial upfront money. And that is a consideration, too. And they are willing participants now. They're not really trying to be resistant to this, but they do see that they want a fair value for their property.
So your take, Basil, is you bought the property, you paid for the property, you paid the taxes, you've maintained the mineral rights, you own it, you've maintained it, you've paid the taxes on it. Montana semper libra, leave me alone.
Correct. Mountaineers are always free, or are we not? Do property owners have the right to own private property in this state or not? I know that we are a mineral-based state, but we have a lot of things that we're destroying right now to just be a mineral-based state because those who are in power are invested in that industry. We have a much more broad spectrum to offer to the world, especially in the lines of free water that just bubbles out of the ground, and we're polluting it like it doesn't matter. But the day is coming when that water will be worth more rather than the gas or the coal, because the gas and the coal will be gone, and we will still need water.
Basil Keaton, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're right. Basil Keaton, West Virginia Mineral Owners Association. Basil, good to speak with you. I appreciate you coming on today. Quite an impassioned argument. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you.
All right. There it is, and we're going to have another fight on this in the next legislative session on forced pooling, lease integration.
We're in the spirit of giving at MVB Bank this year, and our gift to you includes awesome CD products at great rates, like our 58-month 2.12 annual percentage yield CD. You can start saving today with a minimum deposit of just $1,000. Hurry in now and avoid the holiday rush. This is a present that keeps on earning year after year. MVB Bank, your financial life made easy. Member FDIC. Visit us at mvbbanking.com. Changing lives by preventing harm and providing hope and healing to hurting children and families. Burlington United Methodist Family Services has led the way in West Virginia for over 100 years, preventing harm by helping place endangered children in safe, caring foster homes, providing hope by counseling birth parents in their choice to parent or make an adoption plan, and helping adoptive parents in their quest for a child. Go to bumfs.org to see how Burlington United Methodist Family Services is truly changing lives.
This is Talkline on MetroNews. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
There. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
Coming up, Brad Howe, Metro News Sports in 9 minutes on West Virginia leaving today for the Bowl. Not on their trip, but on what that game will mean. So back in May, you'll recall that Ramadi, the Anbar province capital, very important strategic city in Iraq, it's only 60 miles from Baghdad, it fell to ISIS, chased out the Iraqi forces. It was a setback to the Iraqi forces, a U.S.-led campaign. Finally, the Iraqi forces have taken it back. It was much more of a struggle than was expected to be. John Decker, Fox News Radio at the White House, joining us. John, good morning. Thanks.
Good morning to you.
So it is back in Iraqi forces' control, but it was a long, hard slog, longer than many expected when it fell in May.
Yeah, 7 months ago. That's how long the occupation lasted of Ramadi. And as you mentioned, it is a strategic city. It's a symbolic victory as well, because as you know, we've been hearing about all the positive news, as far as what ISIS considers to be positive news that they've had over the course of the past few months. And, it's in large part because of U.S. forces, in the sense that the American-led coalition had conducted, as part of this Ramadi campaign, more than 630 airstrikes since July, including 3 on Sunday, that hit 18 targets. And so, I think it's fair to say that this takeover or retakeover of Ramadi would not have happened if not for the American-led coalition.
And are there still American advisors who are counseling Iraqi forces and trying to help them with their effort?
There are, but we haven't heard anything on the record as it relates to this particular effort to retake control of Ramadi. The American Special Operations Forces are operating primarily in Syria, But as far as what happened here in Ramadi, there were no U.S. Special Ops forces on the ground. It was Iraqi forces on the ground who were directing where and when to drop these U.S. airstrikes.
So the White House is obviously pleased that Ramadi has been retaken. Of course, the next target would be Mosul, and Mosul, farther north, is another strategic city, second largest city in Iraq, and that also is in the hands of ISIS. Any word from the White House, where you're covering today, whether that will be the next target, whether that's in the sights at all for next year?
Well, I would imagine it's certainly in the sites. They're not going to, sort of give us a heads up as to what particular sites are next. But you mentioned Mosul. Mosul, of course, is a very strategic city and one that is in control of ISIS. But so is Fallujah. Fallujah is one of those cities we've heard a lot about over the course of the past decade or so. U.S. forces fought very hard to gain control of Fallujah from Iraqi rebels, and lots of blood and treasure was spilled in terms of retaking Fallujah. Well, now it's in control of ISIS, and Fallujah is the midway point between Ramadi and Baghdad. It's another city, certainly, that is in the sights of U.S. and Iraqi forces in 2016.
John Decker, Fox News Radio at the White House. John, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
All right, man. You too. Yeah, it took a while. You recall that when Ramadi fell, John Kerry said, well, this is a bump in the road. Well, that was a 7-month bump. And it was very difficult to retake, according to the media reports. ISIS had suicide bombers. They had human shields of civilians there. They had the improvised devices that were there. But finally, Ramadi falls back into his Iraqi military hands. Email from Tom. Hoppy, should the legislature pass this, that is forced pooling, it would be legalized robbery, says Tom. There would be less fracking now if the West Virginia EPA, Environmental Pollution Authority, had done their job. Clean water should be the number one concern of all West Virginians, including the politicians. I don't think it's an either or. I mean, I don't think if you have fracturing and you drill for gas, then you don't have clean water. I don't see it that way. You use a lot of water in the process. Fortunately, West Virginia has a lot of water. And the studies that I have seen and read do not indicate that there is any widespread pollution of water or wells from hydraulic fracturing. So I don't see it as an either or. I see this, to me, the best argument that Keaton and opponents have is the property rights issue, which is why a lot of conservative Republicans oppose it. But I tell you, the courts have upheld, there are myriad instances across the country where the courts have upheld forced pooling or actions similar to forced pooling. So it's not as though that an individual's property rights are such that they would always prevail in this argument. Just telling you that. Just telling you that. That is not as sacrosanct as one might think. Okay, we're going to take a break and come back. Brad Howell joins us from MetroNews Sports as to what this bowl game means for West Virginia. That's next when Talkline continues on MetroNews, the voice of West Virginia. It's 11:30. Let's get a news update. Check in with the MetroNews Radio Network and find out what's happening statewide this hour all across the great state of West Virginia.
West Virginia Metro News, I'm Shauna Johnson. West Virginia Southern District will soon need a new U.S. Attorney. 5 years after being appointed to the role, U.S. Attorney Booth Goodwin is preparing to resign effective Thursday, the close of 2015. Goodwin says he'll be going to work for his family's law firm following 15 years total in the U.S. Attorney's office. He is reportedly close to announcing a run for the Democratic gubernatorial nomination. The Democrats who have been out on the campaign trail for months already are businessman Jim Justice and Senate Minority Leader Jeff Kessler. Elsewhere, those with Charleston Jaeger Airport, the largest airport in West Virginia, are asking Governor Earl Ray Tomblin for $10 million in state money to help fix the hillside at the airport that collapsed last March, destroying several buildings. Jaeger Airport spokesperson Mike Plant.
The hope is to get these things started sooner rather than later so that we can get the EMAS safety overrun restored and get the material that's fallen down on Keystone Drive to get that road reopened and reestablished.
The request is for money from other state sources, not the Rainy Day Fund. The city of Huntington is getting bigger. 63 acres are being annexed into the city property where Huntington East Middle School and the Cabell County Career and Technical Center currently sit. You're listening to Metro News, the voice of West Virginia.
Keep up with what's happening in our state at WVMetroNews.com. Whether it's breaking news or the latest political development, high school sports coverage, insights on the Mountaineers or the Thundering Herd, hunting and fishing news, or just the latest weather conditions, your source is WVMetroNews.com. Listen to podcasts of Talkline and Sportsline or watch video streams of your favorite Metro News programs. You'll find all that and more with one free click at WVMetroNews.com. Metro News is the voice of West Virginia.
Hi, it's Tony Caridi, and I've got a great West Virginia story I'd like you to watch. Doddridge County's Clara Santucci is in the final stages of training in her bid to earn a spot on the United States Olympic team in the marathon. Her story embodies West Virginia's culture of hard work, dedication, and grit. In association with the Prim Law Firm, Pikewood Creative has produced a documentary on Clara's Olympic dream. Watch the video by going to primlaw.com. That's PRIM law.com.
A West Virginia University Extension agent says as of now, there's still time for the seasons to get back in line, despite some early blooming due to warm December temperatures.
It's not going to be a huge damaging effect unless we have something to go wrong with the fruit trees and they start blooming too early.
John Porter is an agriculture and natural resources agent in Kanawha County. Colder temperatures are in the forecast for much of West Virginia coming up later this week. From the Metro News Anchor Desk, I'm Shauna Johnson.
Talkline on Metro News. Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank, member FDIC. Please welcome Brad Howe, Metro News Sports. Brad, good morning.
Good morning, Howe.
Why does this bowl game matter? I believe it. I believe it does. I believe it's a very significant game. But I'm asking you, and I'm talking about West Virginia and Arizona State, Saturday night at 10:15. Coverage right here on many of these Metro News stations. Pregame coverage begins at 6 p.m.
Well, I think it means something different to all the different constituencies that are involved. So take it for a minute from a player perspective. We're going to find out how many guys on this West Virginia roster love to play football and want to play in the game, because that's basically what happens in these what we'll call second-tier bowl games. And basically almost everything outside of the college football playoffs now has become sort of a second tier because that playoff's getting so much attention. So how many guys want to go out and play? You don't get many opportunities to do that. This is one with a lot of people watching because it's the final bowl game of the season. So we're going to find out from a player.
Well, are they? Wait. A couple things. Are they? Are a lot of people watching? Is 10:15 on Saturday night after people the night before stayed up till after midnight?
Well, that's a good point. The people that want to watch college football are going to be watching, but I think there's no question that this late time is going to hurt some of the fans. This game's going to end at 2 a.m. Eastern time. So there's going to be a ton of Mountaineer fans that just simply know whether West Virginia won or lost, that they're not going to actually see the conclusion of this game. So I think that's going to factor into the narrative of this a little bit. It's going to be even more results-oriented than games normally are. And what I mean by that is sometimes in a loss, if you watch the entire game, you can say, oh, West Virginia played great, or they got a bad call at the end, or they were right there. That's not going to be the case with this one. It's simply, did you win or did you lose? And a lot of people are going to find that out Sunday morning when they get up.
Have you seen anything this season, though, that suggests to you that this team, particularly the seniors, would not play hard? I really haven't seen that.
No, but here's what you don't know, and okay. I've said this for a long time, and you have been there with me on a lot of these bowl trips, and we've been around these. The challenge these coaches have is this month layoff. Coaches are so much about routine. Yeah. Teams are about routine. Now you haven't played for a month, and you're going into this game, and listen, there's going to be some guys on that roster that don't want to be in the game, and that goes for Arizona State as well. So I think one of the hardest things to do is predict behavior in one of these bowl games.
Yeah.
I don't even think coaches can do it until you get on the field the day of the game. So I just don't think you know how it's going to react from a player perspective until the game begins, and you'll find out then, quite frankly.
You know, that is a great point because this is a long layoff. In fact, we should do some research and see if there's been a layoff this long for, well, anyway. But it has been a long layoff. Incredible.
Yeah, it's nearly a month, and so again, you just don't know how guys are going to react. Sometimes when you get to this point, you've got a 6-6 Arizona State team, you've got a 7-5 West Virginia team. There are some players, and you just don't know how many there are, but there are some that are saying, "All right, let's be done. I just want this season to be over with. I'm ready to move on and do something else with my life. Football's been taking up too much." You have a bunch of other guys that are saying, "This is my final shot. I'm giving it everything I got." And in football, when there's so many guys on the field at one time and you've got both of those factions going at it, you just don't know what a team's going to give. So you asked me the question, have I seen anything that says West Virginia won't show up to play? No, I haven't seen that because this team has seemed to be ready to play, if not at the very beginning of the game, throughout almost every game. But these bowl games are just a different story.
Yeah, and you don't know whether it means squat to Arizona State players because they're staying at home. It's been a month. Their season was a disappointment. They're 6-6. They ended with a loss. They might be in a real funk. You don't know.
Well, Tony and I talked about this on Sportsline last night. I mean, I could easily make the argument that something is wrong in the locker room with this Arizona State team, meaning throughout the course of the year. A team that was a dark horse contender picked by some for the college football playoffs. They're loaded with guys. I mean, if you look at their roster, they've got athletes. But to finish 6-6, something didn't gel with this team. So your likely guess is that this Arizona State team isn't going to be interested in playing in this bowl. But, and you were here for both of these, Tony and I were dead wrong. We agreed on this last night. The two most off guesses I've ever had about how bowl games would go, Music City Bowl and Don Nehlen's final game, and the Fiesta Bowl after Rich Rodriguez left. There was nothing that pointed to the Mountaineers winning either of those bowl games. The program was in some turmoil in each of those cases, and what West Virginia do? They went out, showed they could play, and won both games. So quite simply, you just don't know what you're going to get from either team.
Yeah, and I think that, yeah, you're right. You just don't know. But now we know, seeing Bill Stewart's locker room speech, which was pretty inspirational. Plus, you had a guy named Pat White.
Yeah, you did.
I mean, who just refused to lose. I mean, that guy was a competitor.
No question. But going into that game, the turmoil was in such chaos. No one was talking about that team.
Right.
There was no way that team could. I mean, the whole narrative was that team is not going to be ready to play, and yet it was. So it's just these things are just such crapshoots, and that's really the whole point of this conversation, Hop. These bowl games are such crapshoots because it comes down to the want to. Which team wants to be there? Which team wants to finish strong? And I always say this. I think bowl games are almost the start of the following season rather than a wrap-up of the season you're just ending, because so much of the preseason hype is going to go into what we see happen during these bowl games.
Brad Howes with his MetroNews Sports. There are many bowl games that are played that really don't have a substantive impact on the program or the coach for a variety of reasons. But do you believe, as I do, that this game is much more meaningful to Dana Holgorsen than many bowl games are to a coach or a program?
Totally agree with that, Hop, and maybe even more important to Dana Holgorsen than a lot of these players, because right now there's no question that this program, I don't want to say it's unstable, but it's certainly unsteady. Given all of the questions over the last month about Dana Holgorsen's future as the head coach, the lack of an announcement so far about an extension and what that is going to mean, all of that stuff is swirling around. Tony Gibson doesn't necessarily get a new contract, but he has a clause removed out of his that references the head coach being in place. That's Dana Holgorsen. So those are the questions. There is no doubt going into next year, the number one storyline around this program is, what is Dana Holgorsen's future with West Virginia University? If this West Virginia team comes out flat, plays poorly, and gets beat by a very mediocre Arizona State team, what does that do to the narrative? Now fast forward a couple of weeks, if that were the scenario that develops, and then Shane Lyons announces an extension for Dana Holgorsen, what does that do to the fan base? So, yeah, I think a big performance by the Mountaineers goes a long way to at least quieting things for a few months when it comes to Dana Holgorsen.
Well, I mean, Lions already said that Holgorsen's going to be back, and what if we love to play the what if game, and we will for 4 hours prior to the game on Saturday, but what if West Virginia loses the game or does not perform well, doesn't get nipped at the end, but doesn't perform well, and then there is an extension, and the buyout is still not necessarily favorable to the university, what the buyout's like $4 million, then people are going to look and say, why did you do that deal? So...
Yeah, and what do we talk about so much on all of our shows is it's about momentum with the program. And right now, that loss to Kansas State,
that hurt.
It feels like you gave some momentum back as a program. So the program is not moving in the same direction as it was just a few weeks ago. So I think that's important to try and grab that back. And all of this Dana talk factors into that. And it's tough to have a ton of positive momentum when so many people are wondering what's going to happen with the head coach. The other thing you worry about, and it factors into the time of day on this thing, complaining about the program is a much better position to be in than when apathy sets in. So if people just decide to only watch a little bit of this game and then tune it off, and then football goes away for a number of months, what's that do to the apathy reading as we head into next season? So I think all of those things are in play and will factor in a win or loss.
You really have, because of the time of the game, you really have, and I don't think, I think it'll be, I haven't really fine-tuned my awful prediction, but I think it'll be a close game. I just think it will. Based on the line and based on these two teams, you would think it would be a close game. But if for some reason West Virginia is getting blown out, and I don't think they will, but if they were, then can you hear the televisions all across Mountaineer Nation going off at 11:30, 12 o'clock? And people just tuning out, just saying, well, I'm not, it's midnight, I'm going to bed.
I'll speak for me. I'm gonna watch the game, right? And I'm gonna stay with it as long as I possibly can. But I don't know how many people will do that. Remember, this West Virginia football program is driven by the masses. It's not driven by the diehards. And I think that's what you lose in a game like this. Those of us that are diehards are going to do whatever we can to stay awake till 2 a.m. But the masses that like to come to Morgantown and like to tailgate and like it when West Virginia wins, but they don't live and die with it, that's a big segment of this state's population. And I think that's what goes away as you start to get in the midnight time frame. That's what hurts this bowl.
And that's the group that's the group in attendance that gets you from 40 to 58.
Yeah, no question.
40,000 to 58,000, 59,000.
Yeah, that's a big driver of the buzz that surrounds West Virginia football each week or during a season. It's those people that can't come on here and break down the running back situation, but they do have an opinion on whether they like the coach. They do have an opinion on whether they're excited about football or not. That's a big group of the population, and I just don't think they're going to be engaged in this game much past the first quarter.
Brad Howell, Metro News Sports, and he'll be with us Saturday. Our pregame coverage begins at 6 o'clock. And game coverage begins shortly after 10 o'clock via ESPN. Brad, good talking to you. We'll talk to you this week and, of course, on Saturday starting at 6.
All right. Thanks for having me, Hop.
All right, man. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Hi, it's Tony Caridi, and I've got a great West Virginia story I'd like you to watch. Doddridge County's Clara Santucci is in the final stages of training in her bid to earn a spot on the United States Olympic team in the marathon. Her story embodies West Virginia's culture of hard work, dedication, and grit. In association with the Prim law firm, Pikewood Creative has produced a documentary on Clara's Olympic dream. Watch the video by going to primlaw.com. That's PRIM law.com.
Let's bring them back. Let's keep them home. The visits are just too short, aren't they? There are measures West Virginia can take to help grow our economy, to provide opportunity in the Mountain State. Passing a right-to-work law is one of them. Let's do all we can to move the state forward. Are you tired of telling your family goodbye after the holidays? Well, let's bring them back. Let's keep them home. Urge your legislator to take action. Pass a workplace freedom bill this session. A message from the West Virginia Business and Industry Council.
You're listening to Talkline on Metro News. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
There. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
Talkline on MetroNews. Don't forget about the New Year's Eve celebration. It's going to be in one of them in West Virginia. It's going to be in downtown Princeton. It's the Downtown Countdown in Princeton, West Virginia, New Year's Eve celebration. Going to have live music, street performers. They do a ball drop, fireworks at midnight, and much more. Find more ideas for kicking off the new year in the Mountain State at go2wv.com. Go2wv.com or call 800-225-5982. 800-225-5982. I've started my countdown of the top 9 stories, in my opinion, in West Virginia in 2015. And why 9 instead of 10? Well, because it fit. 3 today, 3 tomorrow, 3 the next day. I don't want to do 4, 3, and 3, or so I did 9. Top 9. What's it matter? Does it have to be top 10? Top 9. Number 9, Fayette County school controversy. Still heading into 2016, not fully resolved as to what they're going to do there. Dr. Michael Martirano says the school conditions there are deplorable. State has had control of the Fayette County schools for the last 5 years. They came up with a plan, went to the school building authority. SBA said no, and here we are. So we'll see if we can work it out in 2016. So Fayette County school controversy, number 9 on my list. Number 8, CSX derailment. February, 27 CSX tanker cars carrying highly flammable Bakken shale crude oil derailed near Montgomery. Huge explosions and fire. Miraculously, and thank goodness it was in an area that wasn't very populated. Well, it would have been if it had gone a little bit farther. 1 person was hurt, 1 home destroyed. Federal Railroad Administration determined the accident was caused by a broken rail, which should have been detected during routine inspections. That was my number 8. Number 7, the Procter & Gamble plant announcement and groundbreaking. The consumer product giant Procter & Gamble revealed in February plans for the $500 million facility in Berkeley County. Groundbreaking was in September. We were there with a live broadcast just off I-81 at that 500-acre site. As many as 1,000 temporary jobs for construction of the 1 million square foot facility over the next several years. And this is just not, this Procter & Gamble, one of the big deals about it is not just, this is, they're going to bring stuff there, then ship it out from them. They're going to manufacture there. And it's the first domestic plant Procter & Gamble has built in some time. They've expanded overseas and in emerging economies, but this is the first domestic factory they've built in some time. So this is a big deal. And when they get on the line, there'll be 700 people who work there. That was my number 7. So tomorrow, 654. Steve in Summersville. Steve, thanks for waiting. Welcome to Metro News Talkline.
Hey, Hop. You was talking about the divergent the situation with between, say, West Virginia and North Carolina from 1950?
Yes, sir.
You think that's something? Look at the 1940 census. In 1940, West Virginia had more people than Florida did.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things have happened. One is that, and believe it or not, this is a factor, is the development and expansion of air conditioning.
That's right. That's the reason.
That's a big reason.
Above everything.
I mean, who wanted to live in Florida before you had air conditioning?
And the people who lived on the coast, you couldn't live. It was unbearable.
Yeah, it was unbearable.
And like Orlando, look, Orlando. Do you think that Disney World would be there without air conditioning?
No, it was nothing. It was a swamp. So I mean,
the entire South was because of air conditioning.
Sure. I mean, there are whole books written about how air conditioning changed the South and all that shifted to the South.
I read one learned man said that if it wasn't for air conditioning, the South to this day would not have recovered from the Civil War.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge, you wouldn't, exactly. I mean, it's a huge deal. I mean, there are other factors too, but that was a key factor in this.
Well, I mean, if it was other factors, that's the main factor, because if it was like talk about taxes or judiciary, then there would be the different states they would be different, but all the states in the South have grown. So that tells you right there that that's the overriding factor.
The only state that is the only southern state on course to lose a congressional district after the 2020 census is Alabama, and I can't tell you why. I don't know why that is. I don't know why, but it's the only southern state. All the rest of the states losing population are in the east, northeast. Illinois, I think New York, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but and it's the South and the Southwest. It's growing. So, thanks for the call. Air conditioning, big deal. Changed a lot. Quick break. We'll be back. 1-800-765-8255. Email talkline at wvmetronews.com. Give me a tweet at Hoppy Kercheval. Email Hoppy. Mineral rights to a lot of properties in West Virginia were bought up many years ago, especially in areas with proven coal and or natural gas. Given the 80% threshold for a landowner to be forced into leasing their mineral rights, what if the minerals on 8 of the 10 adjoining tracts are already owned by one drilling or gas company? Does this constitute 80% or one owner? I got to look. Well, I don't know how the law is going to be written. I mean, the bill, I don't know how it's going to be written. And I don't know whether it's going to be written to say 80% of the reserves or 80% of the property owners. If there's 10 plots, if you have 8 plots, I'm not sure how it's going to be written. But I'll have to check that out. But I don't think you have many instances where it's, the coal company owns 80% of the mineral rights. I think a lot of these are individuals with tracts of land that, farms that they've inherited or farms that they've stayed on the home place for years. So, all right. Take a break and be back. We'll return in just a moment. Stay with us.
Look around your holiday table this year and think, how many faces are missing because they've had to leave home to find good jobs in more technology-driven, economically diverse states? The High Technology Foundation is working to keep young, educated West Virginians here at home by attracting high-tech companies to our state. The High Technology Foundation is helping build stronger West Virginia families by building a stronger West Virginia, because there's no place like home and family for the holidays. Learn more at wvhtf.org.
We're in the spirit of giving at MVB Bank this year, and our gift to you includes awesome CD products at great rates, like our 58-month 2.12 annual percentage yield CD. You can start saving today with a minimum deposit of just $1,000. Hurry in now and avoid the holiday rush. This is a present that keeps on earning year after year. MVB Bank, your financial life made easy. Member FDIC. Visit us at mvbbanking.com.
This is Talkline on MetroNews. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
This is a guided meditation on parenting. Begin by finding a comfortable, relaxed position. Let out whatever stress is in your body. It could be from the time you left your daughter's blouse in the dryer too long and it shrunk 4 sizes, or when you donated her private diary to the public library, or when you thought chaperoning the school dance meant actually dancing in the school dance. Whatever it is, let it go. The fire you started with that experimental dinner, let it go. The time you drove away from the gas pump with the gas pump. Let it go. 3, very relaxed. 2, there you go. 1.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you. For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Just now, another kid dropped out of school. There's one every 20 seconds. Over 200 kids an hour. That adds up to nearly 5,000 kids every school day.
If we do nothing, 3.5 million kids won't receive a diploma over the next 4 years. But there is someone who can change that. And that someone is you. United Way knows that kids who have a caring adult in their life are more likely to make it. So make a pledge. Tutor a child who needs help. Mentor a kid who needs someone on their side. Volunteer to read to children. Because the path to success or failure starts long before graduation day. And the difference between a graduate and a dropout could be you. Take the pledge to volunteer now at unitedway.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
No, I dropped the ball. I was going to play, and this is micro information because most of you will not know what I'm talking about. But I should have played bumper music today from Motorhead because Lemmy died. Those of you who know what I'm talking about. Those of you who don't could not care less. Email from Jeff. Hoppy, some of us are going to DVR the game, avoid the paper in the morning, and watch it over breakfast. Go Mountaineers. Who waits, no offense to my friends in the print business, and I too have periodic pieces published in the print media, but who waits for the paper anymore to see what the score was? Jeff? I mean, seriously, you're showing your age. My dear gray-haired mother at age 88, if she does not stay up to watch the game, she'll stay up for a while. She'll fall asleep. She'll wake up. She'll fall asleep. She'll wake up. She'll finally go to bed. She'll try to watch the game. And then she'll get up in the morning and she'll go to the computer and she'll check the MetroNews website to see what happened, or your favorite website. But and again, this is just about how it all changes. I mean, will anybody in West Virginia, will anybody be waiting for the boy or girl to throw the paper at their house Sunday morning to find out what the score of the game was? You may want to read about it or read what your favorite columnist says. By the way, I don't know what they're going to do about it because newspapers they'll be in bed. They will not be able to hold the presses for that. I don't see how they could. I mean, maybe they can. I mean, the game's not going to end until 2 o'clock in the morning. So I don't know what newspapers are going to do. Well, I'm not talking about their online part. Okay, I mean, clearly they'll have an online edition like everybody does, but I don't know what you would do. You can't hold the presses till 3 o'clock in the morning, I don't think, to get the paper out. Well, that's up to them. That's their problem. Okay. I forgot to mention, here in West Virginia, 2 great jackpot games you can play from the West Virginia Lottery. Powerball has drawings on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Mega Millions has drawings on Tuesdays and Fridays. The Powerball jackpot is $300 million. The Mega Millions jackpot is $117 million. Please play responsibly. Got to run. See you tomorrow. Working on something special for tomorrow. Let's wait and see if it develops. That's called foreshadowing. That's called forward motion. We'll see you tomorrow. This has been Talkline on Metro News, the voice of West Virginia.